Hey, this is Joe Hubbard from JoeHubbardBassVideos.com, coming at you today with another lesson. And this is the third lesson in my functional diatonic harmony course. Today's lesson is on the minor 2-5-1 progression. So grab your bass and let's get started. All of the chords built from the natural harmonic and melodic minor scales are considered diatonic chords to their respective minor scales. A more practical approach is needed when identifying the definitive chords that outline the sound in a minor key. This approach is based on the idea that the definitive chords in minor harmony should contrast with the definitive chords in major harmony. With that said, the outcome of this is that there is an immediate definition or recognition between a major or a minor sound. We will achieve this through using certain diatonic chords from all three of the minor scales while excluding others. Before we go any further with this concept, let's take a look at all of the diatonic chords from all three of the minor scales for close comparison. The first scale that we're going to take a look at is the natural minor, and the reason we want to start with this is the scale that we get the key signature from. So if we start with the C natural minor scale, the key signature is going to be 3 flats, or the relative major is going to be E flat major, and that's important to understand that. We also want to first identify what the formula of the scale is. The formula for the natural minor is 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7, and then you're back to 1. So when we use the Roman numeral analysis, we must use that in regard to the formula of the scale. This often gets confused. So as I go up the scale, I start on the root. The first chord is going to be a minor 7th chord. So I want to call that 1 minor 7th. The second chord is going to be called 2 minor 7 flat 5. The third chord is flat 3 major 7. The fourth chord is 4 minor 7. The fifth chord is 5 minor 7. The sixth chord is flat 6 major 7. And the seventh chord is flat 7 7. Back to the root, and we've got the minor 7th chord. So I want you to be able to play these chords as an exercise. Up and down, put it under the melodic filter, so you do it descending as well, you do it ascending, descending, descending, ascending. Really good practice for you to get that sound into your head. Understand that each one of these chords is valid in relation to being harmonized from this key, but what we're going to do within this program is we're going to be isolating certain chords versus others to use as the definitive chords for the minor 2-5-1. The scale is harmonic minor, and the formula is going to be 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, and then 7, natural 7. Okay? The unique thing about this scale is the idea that between the flat 6 and the natural 7, you've got what's called an augmented second. Remember, scales are built in seconds. Note that the distance between each one of these notes is either a major second or a minor second, but between the flat 6 and the natural 7, it's an augmented second, which kind of looks as well like a minor third. So with that in mind, when you look at that, it kind of throws it off from most all the other scales that you've probably looked at, and it poses that problem. So when you're harmonizing the scale between the flat 6 and the 7, you're going to have that augmented second leap there. So that's a good thing to maybe isolate and practice, just so you can get over the idea that you've got that little leap. So the first chord in the sequence is going to be 1 minor major 7th. Okay, this is a minor triad with a natural 7 on top. chord is a 2 minor 7 flat 5. Third chord is a major 7 sharp 5, and we're going to call this flat 3 major 7 sharp 5. Okay, we haven't covered this chord yet, but we need to start getting into this now. And you need to start to see this later as a substitution for the 1 minor chord. Okay, the 4 chord is a minor 7th chord. The 5 chord is a dominant chord. So we have 5, 7. Okay, the 6 chord is going to be flat 6 major 7. The 7 chord is 7 diminished. And then we've got the 1 minor major again. So go through these meticulously, really slowly, and understand how to play these. And more importantly, you're starting to digest this sound that comes from these scales. Sometimes it takes a little time to kind of, let it sink in. But it's real important as an ear training thing to be practicing these different scales. Don't just look at them once or twice. Really get into them. Immerse yourself into this. The thing that I find to be a real weak point in most people's understanding about harmony is the minor part. Most people get the major part. It's the minor part which is different. It's hard because we can use all 3 of these scales. The third scale that we need to look at for close comparison is the melodic minor scale. And something to point out here is that for our purposes, this scale is the same ascending as it is descending. If you've done any kind of study in classical music, you would have probably discovered that in classical harmony, they refer to the melodic minor scale as a melodic minor ascending, but when you descend, it's a natural minor scale. So for our purposes, it's going to be the same scale going up and going down. And in jazz, they call this scale also jazz minor. So you might see that name somewhere, jazz minor. That's the same as the melodic minor scale. The formula is going to be 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 1. And it goes like this. And it's an interesting sound because it's just like the major scale with a flat 3. And oddly, so many people find it so hard to transition from a major reality. They've been practicing a lot of major stuff, and most of the stuff they listen to is pop orientated, which is really based on either the major scale or the relative minor, which is really the same scale, just inverted. So the idea is when you get to these other minor scales, it becomes hard for people to hear because they never play them or never listen to music that has them in it, and then it becomes very foreign to them, like they're trying to study a complete foreign language unbeknownst to them. So you really need to get into it and just get your feet wet, just dip your foot in the water and check it out, because the number of people that have come to me for lessons, been playing like 13 years and never even played a melodic minor scale or really got into what it was about astounds me. So again, what we want to do is use the Roman numeral analysis. We want to go through this, so we start with 1 minor major 7. Okay, this one has a 2 minor 7. Okay, in difference to the natural minor and the harmonic minor that we studied, which had a 2 minor 7 flat 5. I want you to start seeing the comparison. Line these up, write these down, and then look at lined up together. Note the comparisons between chords and note the commonalities that happen. So the third chord is flat 3 major 7 sharp 5. Okay, the 4 chord is 4 7. The 5 chord is 5 7. The 6 chord is 6 minor 7 flat 5. The 7th chord is 7 minor 7 flat 5. And then I'm back to 1 minor major 7. So again, practice these slowly. Note that difference of that minor 7 get into the characteristic sound of what's going on with this scale. One of the things that that can help you to internalize this a little quicker is this little bit of knowledge here, that there's some repeated chord types on some of the scale degrees. So on 4 and 5 we have both of those chords are dominant 7th chords, and then 6 and 7, both of those chords are minor 7 flat 5s. These little tricks can kind of help you to remember the actual scale. It gives you like an anchor to kind of remember that. In the beginning, there's a lot of repetition, there's a lot of memorization, but really get your head down and do that, and just get this stuff under your fingers so you know it. Once you know it, you can start working with it. If you don't really know it, it'll always feel like you're starting over again. So get in, practice this. Once you get this down, come back, I've got more stuff for you. What we have to do now is to compare the harmony between all 3 of the different minor scales in order to determine what the 2 chord's going to be in a minor key. Remember, the premise of this is all based on the fact that we have to have a characteristic difference in sound between major and minor. So it can't be the same thing in major. With that in mind, this concept will point us straight to the melodic minor scale, because if we look at the 2 chord from melodic minor, it's exactly the same as the 2 chord in major, so we can't use it. We need to cross it out. The 2 chords in natural minor and harmonic minor is a minor 7 flat 5, and that's what we're going to use. That gives us the characteristic difference that we need, which is that flat 5. If I then compare those 2 chords, the 2 chord in the major key, 2 chord in the minor key, I can really hear that characteristic difference between major and minor. Note that the minor key shares a darker quality, and I want you to practice this via ear training. You can start singing these arpeggios or just play them and really hear the difference. You can make tapes to where you can play one chord and then the next and try to recognize the difference between the 2. This will get it into your ears, and this will get it so when you then just hear a record, you'll then be able to identify a minor 7 flat 5 versus a minor 7th chord. 5 chord in minor harmony is built from the 5th degree of the harmonic minor scale. We come to this conclusion by first noticing that the 5 chord in the natural minor is a 5 minor 7th. Because the 5 minor 7th doesn't include the natural 3rd, it sounds weak when it resolving to the tonic chord. If I took a 5, 7, resolving then to a 1 minor chord here, you can hear that that natural 3 leads us to the root of the 1 chord, and that's called a leading tone. The 5 minor 7 has a minor 3rd and has a weaker resolution. With that in mind, we can use 5 minor 7ths, but just not as our primary 5 chord. It's not strong enough. We do hear this seldomly in popular music and also in Brazilian music. So we want to keep it kind of on the sidelines, put a little asterisk next to it and say we will use 5 minor 7, but it's not our primary choice because it's not strong enough and it's not common enough to use as our 5 chord in a 2-5-1 situation in a minor key. So when we then further investigate the different scales, we'll see that if we go to the harmonic minor and the melodic minor, the 5 chords are the same. They're both dominant 7th chords. And this is the same thing that we have in major. So we have to find that characteristic difference. So what we need to do is extend the chord. We go root 3, 5, 7. The first extension is a 9. So we need to extend it to a 9 in both scales to see if there's a difference from major. If I go to melodic minor, it extends to a natural 9. That's exactly the same as in the major key, so I cross that out. I can't use that. Okay? Remember, we have to have that characteristic difference. So what we then go to is harmonic minor. We extend it to the 9 and we get a flat 9 because a harmonic minor has that A flat. So I have that flat 6 here, which over the 5 chord is the flat 9, and that gives us that difference. It's also important to point out that that note, the flat 9, if I then cross-reference that with the 2 minor 7 flat 5, specifically the flat 5 in the 2 minor 7 flat 5, it's the same note. So 2 minor 7 flat 5, D minor 7 flat 5, the 5 is A flat, and then the G7 flat 9, the flat 9 is the A flat. So that note in particular is characteristic to the minor key, very important. Now, we have 5-7 flat 9. You may have also heard that if you see something like a flat 9, people may refer to this as an altered dominant chord. So what we also want to say is that any altered dominant can reflect a minor tonality. Don't get confused about this. Just understand it's a sound choice thing. And it means that I could have a 5 chord in a minor key that was a flat 9, or I could have a G7 sharp 9. That's an altered dominant. Or I could have a G7 flat 13. That's an altered dominant. And all of these would reflect a 5 chord in a minor key. One chord varies because we can use all 3 of the minor scales. We have 5 different choices of 1 chords that we can use. We can use a minor triad, a triad with the added ninth, a minor 6 chord, and that's a natural 6 on the top of that. So you'd have root, flat 3, 5, natural 6, and then you'd have a minor major 7th as your 1 chord, and then you can have, in some cases, a minor 7th. Okay, so let's talk about these. Now the first 4 are all related. We've got the minor triad with the added ninth, we've got the minor 6, and we've got the minor major 7th. Now, what a lot of people don't understand is that in minor harmony, the 2-5-1, the most common thing that you'll see is a minor triad is the 1 chord, whether it's a jazz tune or not. It's usually a minor triad, or a minor triad with an added ninth. But if you go to extend those chords, you're going to use either a natural 6 or a natural 7, and that really brings those 2 triads underneath the umbrella of melodic minor. That's really kind of our scale choice for our 1 chord. Okay, it's melodic minor for the most part. Okay, the 1 minor 6, obviously from melodic minor because it's the only scale that has the natural 6, and then the 1 minor major 7th. Now the reason that we really tag it all into melodic minor is because we have that same concept within the major harmony, whereas the 1 minor 6 and the 1 minor major 7 are interchangeable for each other. It's just a taste choice thing of why they're used. Okay? Again, in minor harmony, the most common thing that you'll see is the triad is the 1 chord. But this information is of particular importance because as a bass player, when you go to extend those lines, whether in your bass lines or in solos, most people look at the triad and they think the extension is the flat 7, and it's incorrect. Okay? If you're going to have a 1 minor 7th chord, it will be notated as that. It'll never just be a triad and then the extension is the flat 7. It'll be that chord from the get-go. Okay? And then that's usually used, it's not as common, the 1 minor 7, but it's usually used as a pivot chord that sort of takes you back into a major key. Learning the 2-5-1 in minor, we must be able to recognize any combination of these chords and in every key. This enables us to determine the key of the moment at any given point of a composition. What I want you to do is to download the PDF worksheet on this lesson and then complete the combinations of the 2 minor 7 flat 5, 5-7 flat 9, and then go through the possibilities of 1 chords, the 1 minor triad, the 1 minor triad with the added ninth, the 1 minor 6, the 1 minor major 7th, and then lastly the 1 minor 7. What we're going to do next is take this and put this in this functional drill where we're playing these voice leading bass lines like we did with the major 2-5-1s. So I didn't do anything tricky with this one, like use the octave displacement. We just took the 2 basic fingerings and then we moved it across our fretboard. So let me show you what I mean. If we take the first one in C, what we're going to do is, as well, is we're going to take this through a backing track drill through the cycle of descending major seconds like we did with the major. You're probably getting used to that sound now, which is good, and also used to transitioning from one key to the next. Many people practice in static keys and then move to another key in practice, but there's no transition from one key to the next. That's crucial, and you've really got to get that skill together because that has more applicable transference when you're actually working on tunes. Okay, so if I take the 2-5-1 in C minor from this fingering here, where I start with my 3rd finger, okay, and I go up to the flat 7, and then down to the 3rd of the G dominant 7 flat 9, and then I'm just going to step down the harmonic minor scale. The 3, I got the flat 9 here, the 1, the 7, and then I go flat 3 into the 1 minor chord. And then I play this idea. And that gives me that mirror line in relation to the major ones that we did. If I take another fingering, because I'm going to have a couple of fingerings for this to get myself around the fretboard, I start with the 1st finger, and I'm going to do this one in B flat because this is the way the progression moves. And we go from here, so I arpeggiate up to the 7th, I've got the 3rd, then flat 9, root, flat 7, okay, and then I'm to my flat 3, and I've got that broken arpeggio line here. And then I'm just going to move it around, you know, similar to what I did last time, except I didn't use the octave displacement on this one. Troubleshoot these for yourself, and if you can figure out maybe to apply the octave displacement in some of the keys, do that. You know, go ahead and try to do this on your own. There's some of this stuff you got to start to troubleshoot on your own so you can find those answers for yourself. That's important to do. But go through it, play along with the backing track. Remember, as always, make sure to just practice these exercises out of time. Get them under your fingers before you put it together with the backing track. Get this down. Have fun with this backing track. When you get done, come back and we'll do a debrief. today's lesson, but before we go, let's take a look at what we've learned. In today's lesson, we've learned how to recognize 2-5-1 progressions in a minor key area. We've also learned what makes the characteristic difference in sound between a major and a minor key. We've also learned how to voice lead the walking bass lines to create a smooth transition while moving from one chord to the next. We then put it in a functional drill and learned how to transition from key to key smoothly while moving through the cycle of descending major seconds. As always, practice smart, work hard, and play creatively. I'll be checking in with you next week for Lesson 4. Take care.